What is a spirit name? What does it mean to embrace your light? What does it mean to live into a new? Perhaps a spirit name is a way to embrace all aspects of you, superpowers and all. Clark Kent, for example, navigated one dimension and saved the day as Superman in another. Like Superman, we all have our kryptonite, and we have our light. Thank you for listening along as we share our stories and ideas. Thank you so much for this, Divine Scarlet. You're always on board to do new things and make things happen. So I appreciate you so much, and all of you for sharing this journey and talking about names and what that means to you. But before we start, can I ask a favor that you introduce yourself and tell us how you're shining your light these days? I hate that question of what do you do? So I'm flipping that to how are you shining your light?
You want to go first, me?
Go ahead.
My name is Melissa Martinez. My name is Divine Scarlet, as some people know me as. And I feel like, first of all, like when they say shining your light, I feel like that is, like kind of a one-sided question where I feel like it's both things. And this has come up for me a lot lately, is one of my main things that I've been teaching lately is to embrace actually also the dark side of yourself, because all your little secrets of the unconscious lie in that space. And to not to be afraid, like I don't know if any of you have read Joseph Campbell or even Star Wars. He goes and talks about in Star Wars about how Luke in the hero's journey, you have to go and find that little piece of dark that you have to, make whole within the self. And I really think that stands out in a lot of mythologies all throughout time. And I think that's probably what's coming out for me and all my clients lately more than anything. So I just wanted to say that. And so when I say light, it's more of like, I feel like I kind of approach things as like a therapist would, where you're trying to, dig deeply within the self to find these natural lights within yourself.
Nice. And you're doing astrology readings, and crystal charts?
Yeah, right now crystal charts has got me busy. Yeah, that's what I'm doing the most of. But then yes, I am an astrologer. I've done that for like 20 years, so that's my biggest thing. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you.
I can go next. I'm Amanda May, and some of you might know me as Amanda Gilbert. I am a master Reiki teacher and the owner of Reiki Influence, and the founder of Tri School of Reiki, because I like to teach Reiki. It's so much fun. That's how I like to shine my light. And I also like to shine my light teaching a lot of things. I teach different workshops and I teach English and public speaking. So I love teaching. And let's see what else. I shine my light through sharing my message on Facebook and Instagram. Also, a Facebook group that I have for Reiki practitioners, and all Reiki practitioners and people that are seekers are invited to come on in. I find that my big method and message lately is self-care, self-healing, moving forward into this new paradigm shift that seems to be happening in 20 and 21, and how we navigate that and come out stronger, better, allowing for more diversity and more healing and inclusivity of the people in our culture, in our society, in our world. I find that I'm really focused on that right now. I want to bring together where all of our citizens feel loved and accepted and welcomed in our world, not just our country, our citizens of the world feel seen, heard, and appreciated. So that's kind of been my focus in my writing and my intention setting. So thank you for allowing me to share that.
Beautiful. And Cole, I know you as Cole, my little superhero saving me in my dreams.
Yeah, I've been known by many names. I've been called lots of things. So some around here knew me as Cole. My birth given name is Nicole. The most recent name that I've become aware of, which is my spirit name, is Ashera. So this is like the debut of, I mean, other than Crystal and another friend of ours, like nobody knows that. So, but I'm with Divine Scarlet. So on this whole shining your light thing is that, and I actually realized it years ago in my own yoga practice when doing inversions. There was so much of this emphasis on the light, the light, the light, the light. And when I would do inversions, I would try to focus on this single pillar of light, and it would still not be quite stable. And one day when I was upside down and thought, had tried to like think about it, all of a sudden it kind of just came through me. It was like, this is a single pillar of dark and light. It's that balance of the two, the two energies that that most people mistakenly think are in opposition to each other just because they're opposites. But really, they're opposites, but they're working together in harmony to create that balance, to create that unity through diversity. And so it was when I realized that like, boom, like my inversion became completely solid and light, as in weight wise light. So I think that's, that leads right into like, how do I now show up doing what I do? Because with the things that are going on in the world, in-person yoga classes aren't possible. So I do have, I offer stuff like that privately, through Zoom, or but basically what I do is, the universe likes to keep me on a need to know basis. So I spend my days winging it, and people just show up in my existence, and then I help them with whatever it is that is going on. And I find that a lot of it is helping them to realize that, when they are in a period of what seems very dark and they're feeling like it's not supposed to be this way, or I'm broken, or something's wrong with me because I'm in this place, helping them to realize that, no, this is where the magic happens, and then they're like, oh, I thought there was something wrong with me because I felt this way. And I'm like, no, you're right where you need to be. So that's what I'm just fulfilling my cosmic duty, winging it, just winging it.
Beautiful. Thank you. And I'm Aman Devi, Carr, or Crystal Ray. And I like that you said this idea of like, you haven't told anyone, and I'm so glad you shared, Cole, your name change. And for me, this whole idea of a spirit name is kind of like almost like coming out of the closet or making that change on a spiritual level. That's like, oh, I'm embracing something new as a way to work with who I'm showing up today, or at least that's how it feels today. Yeah. So I'm shining my light doing readings or playing on YouTube. So thank you for being part of this journey.
That's really beautiful just to even see, like, in the stuff that we've already posted, how many people are actually replying in like the message and want to know more about the message. And to me, that's all of what it is. And when she was talking right now, one thing kept popping up in my head was the when the upside down hangman card on tarot. It's like just looking at the same thing from a different side, right?
Right. Yeah, definitely. And I think that's why I like the idea of embracing a name or embracing like a spirit animal, because I feel like that offers that perspective to look at both the dualities within, but also how you present yourself, both internally and externally. Yeah, definitely. I like that you both talk about the light and the dark, and that she also showing up as needed, I think, is a beautiful concept.
Yeah, I was actually gonna say that's what I was gonna say, showing up, because Abraham Hicks talks about that as being a state of alignment and receptivity. So you're not like already letting your mind lead you through your day. You're waiting to receive where it is that you go for that day. It's
Right.
really a powerful way to, it's a preferred for me, but I don't do it nearly enough. Like my ego and my mind are involved. They're like, I've got my to-do list, people. To be successful, I've got A, B, C, D. I got time for spirit. I got A, B, C, D to do. The whole thing is about spirit. Hello.
Oh yeah, there you are. There you are. Good, good, good.
Yay. We were just talking about how inspired we were about your talk.
Yeah, I'm far from an expert on that. I feel such a jerk sometimes because Melissa, you take care of everything. You take care of all the technical part and keep me moving forward.
Like I'm an Aries. I don't know if we're gonna talk about signs, but yeah, the Aries in me is just like I'm always doing something, and like she was talking about, you know, they need to be more receptive, step back and do less. Like that's like I understand that. I did do that like with dating and stuff like that, being less, you know, mannish, you know, just because Aries likes to take the lead for ourselves, and we're like, we don't need you, and then it's like, wait a minute, I want him to do stuff for me. Why is this not working? So I've really had to like learn how to be receptive, but I still notice in my daily life, I don't make lists because I have to Virgo and Saturn. So I'm like anti-list, but it's still like, I got to do something today. You know?
What I really like about, I haven't heard all of your stories and I don't know everything, but what I like is that each of us kind of come from a different place and I see so many similarities. And I love how we each come to a journey with different pieces of a puzzle that either makes us feel whole or helps inspire someone else. And I really liked, Cole, how you talked about like showing up as needed. I think showing up, Amanda, was your words, but that like, you know, instead of winging it, it's like you're here doing what you're being called to do or asked to do or inspired to do. It's beautiful.
Yes. Abraham Hicks calls it the receptive mode. Being in the receptive mode, so you're receiving what happens next instead of having it already planned out with your mind or your ego. It's a really beautiful way to get your flow through the day. So I honor that you can do that. I'm trying to do that more.
It's a really great way to be looked at like you're a lunatic too. I had a few years ago, I had a guy that I went out with a few times, and of course, this is why it only happened a few times, was because like it was like the second or third time we were out, and he was asking me like, you know, the whole 5-year thing. I thought, 5 years. Don't. What
5-year thing? You know, the 5-year thing people talk about. Love it.
Like, it's 11 o'clock in the morning.
You're like, I haven't even had my coffee. You're talking about 5-year plan.
I learned years ago, don't, like when I was 20, I had my whole life mapped out. Like, no, that was a waste of energy planning all that because nothing ever happened the way I thought it would. So I had to get real comfortable with just being able to wing it and to not really know what was coming next, and just having to trust that I will know what I need to know when I need to know it. You know, it wasn't easy. I'm a Scorpio.
Oh, I was going to ask that next. Okay. I feel like I get you now.
Right. People are, oh, that must be so nice. Like, no, it was like a grueling nightmare of a process to have to get comfortable with. Like, I'm a Scorpio. I was, you know, the firstborn, you know, I'm like the classic firstborn type A Scorpio. So having to get comfortable with winging it is like my biggest nightmare. But it's 90%.
So funny. how different people see that. And that guy went straight for the 5-year plan. Sometimes this can work in relationships though, because the other morning, my sweet, sweet man, he says to me, so what kind of goals should we set for our life and our relationship in the next year? And I was just like, I haven't even rolled over yet. I haven't had any coffee. I don't even know what day it is. I mean, you're talking to me about what we're doing for our life plan this year. I'm like, I need to get the comments out, then maybe we could have a conversation.
For him to ask something like that, you know, where we really don't know from day to day, you know, what we're gonna be in the 3D world permitted to be able to do. You know, so it might be like, yeah, you know, like one of my coworkers, she's getting married. They, you know, got engaged, and last year, so this is before all this stuff happened, and so then things started to like the restrictions started to get lifted, so they had a guest list of about like 100 150 people, so they only have about 6 months until the wedding, and so they're like, we're gonna have to scale it back to 25 people now because I'm in Maryland. And so they're just like, you know, so go ahead, make plans, set goals, set intentions, have a good time, but be open to like winging it.
Totally.
Yeah. And it's interesting you brought up wedding, especially since we're talking about names. Like when you make that commitment to another human being, that it might be an option to take on a name, yay or nay, keep it once that's split, or whichever, however you decide to play with your identity and your legal name. So, Amanda, you've legally changed your name, haven't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What was that process like, and what made you choose that?
Well, actually, I had a commitment ceremony with my ex-husband first, and I never really wanted to be married. I never felt like having a document was important to me. However, we started a company together, and it started to gain momentum and get funding. And we felt after a couple years that it would behoove me to not only be legally married to him, but to take his name because of legal matters that may come up. So I really, even though it didn't matter to me and our relationship was on its way out anyway, I just felt like I needed to do that for sense of security within the company. So far, it really didn't matter, and it really wouldn't have mattered, you know, in the end. But it was nice because I got to change my middle name, which is what, I mean, if I could just go by Amanda May, I would totally do that, and I would ditch the last name altogether. But I did choose to do that. If I were to get married again, I would probably take his name depending on if I liked it, or I might just change my name legally to Amanda May, because I don't have an attachment to my formal maiden name, because it belonged to my father, and I didn't have a real strong bond with him or a relationship. So that's why I chose to change it too, because I thought maybe I'll take a fresh start, a fresh name, and not have this old name tying me to some unpleasant memories. You know?
Thanks for sharing. I've thought about that with what people would think of like coming out with a different name, whether it is a rejection. Did your family take it as such, or is that okay to ask? And you can say pass if I ask something you don't want to answer.
Sure, I would love to answer it. No one's really commented on it, except for my mother. I think she's the only one that really knows. Nobody else, because it's a middle name change, and they all just went along with it when I changed my last name, even though my aunt and uncle still send me a card with my maiden name because they share the same name. So they always, which I never push against any of it. I love them, you know, no matter what. So it just, I'm happy to have that name or be acknowledged by the name. The thing is my last name really has never mattered that much to me. It's always been my attachment to my first name that mattered. And then I didn't care much for my middle name is what is where I think the tension was lying, but since you asked me to be on this panel, I've been thinking more about it, and there's a lot more emotion and things that I ever even realized attached to this name. I don't know if the rest of the people on the panel, have had the same realization or contemplation. I was like, whoa, I thought, no big deal. It's a name. A rose by any other name still smells so sweet, right? And then I was like, whoa, shit. Perfect. I was like, there is some juice to this. I opened up a can. Thank you for giving me the can opener. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And I'll talk more about that can opening when it's appropriate.
Up to you. Melissa, you had a beautiful story. I think you gave me a piece of what your name means. What does your name mean? What does that mean to you?
Well, let me tell you at first, and I am into this whole idea of like, I really feel like there's this middle ground of what we were talking about earlier, needing like learning to manifest, which is more being in the flow versus learning how to be also in this timeline, right? So you have your lists and you know your to-do things, but so it's a really fine line to me of always staying in that middle space of going back and forth. So I feel it at one level, a name is attachment, right? It's a label that we're attaching to ourselves that we're identifying with. And the idea of attachment really comes from ego self. So to me, it's like also one of the reasons I kind of like my name is I didn't actually like do the numerology, and I've done numerology since I was like 20. So I'm surprised I didn't do that. Like, why didn't I do that? And I just liked the name. It came to me just because it was like the idea of being divine. And that's kind of like my message to everybody is that we're all divine. We all are at birth divine. And it's like that idea of how we grow up, that we are conditioned to like stepping out of being our true selves. And so getting people closer to that idea that we are like when I see everything say you're made of stars, it's true. We really are, you know, and we're literally part of the universe. And so I really feel like that middle space of learning to attach and then unattaching, it's this really weird, and it does take you a long time to go in between. But so when I got that name, I just thought to myself it was going to be like for my company. But people call me it like as my name all the time. So I kind of feel like it pushed on me in a weird way. And I was like, okay, I'll be divine if you want to call me divine. And now I put that you are divine at the end of all my things, because it's, even though you're calling me, it's you too, you know? And I actually did the numerology on it after you started talking about this, because I'm an astrologer and I do that kind of stuff. It's all about looking, right? And I do feel like there's a place where you got to not look and make your decisions not looking. And so this one I just barely did. And I came up being of service to people, compassion, and being inventive. It's the number 6 versus my normal number that's more like a 7 and more mystical. But also I didn't push myself out there to help people like on a larger level before. Before it was just like kind of one-on-one people I met, and this kind of like is pushing me out into doing it for a bigger group or audience of like the healing kind of work.
Nice.
I just want to add one. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, sorry.
I just thought it was interesting that you brought up the numerology, because I was thinking about this, and then I recalled like when I was planning my new middle name, what the numerology was going to be, and it was the same.
Oh, wow.
To be the same. Oh. Yeah, I don't even remember what it was now, but I just remember being like, whoa, I guess it doesn't matter.
Not knowing everything too. It's like you just end up doing it and it's natural, you know? So I have to tell myself these days, do not look at your transits, because sometimes I'll read something and be like, oh my God, this is coming, you know? And that's not a good state to be in either, you know? So these days I'm like, okay, if you see something bad, you're just going to make an intention on how to create the best thing possible out of these energies, you know?
Beautiful. And I know I call you Divine Scarlet, like in my brain, that's who you are. And Azria, how do you say it? I was afraid I was going to mess that up. You're in my phone as that, but clearly I spelled it wrong, but I fixed that.
Okay, so it's Ashira.
Ashira, okay.
Ashira. Yeah. So yeah, that was interesting. And this is one of those things that, it gets so far out. Not like, not for me, it doesn't get so far out into woo woo, but when you reach a certain point and like, to like the third dimensional humans, you seem like, perhaps you need a little vacation in a room with a little nice little jacket. I realize that this is one of those stories that, just some people would be like, oh, she's really off her rocker now. But I was actually in a meditation, and we were doing energy work, and I was with various ascended beings, and they just simply called me that name. Like, it wasn't like a ceremony or anything like that. It wasn't an initiation. It was, we were gathered together for a certain purpose, working together like apparently we always have. And they were just they were kind of calling me to the carpet on something. And they were like, now, Ashira, you know that, blah, 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 blah. Just the same as Crystal would call me Cole. Like, they were just like, look, Ashira, you know that you can't be interfering too much with, so, and I think that's, because I, was given a Sanskrit name by my yoga teacher, which is on my Facebook thing, but like, I've never really completely embraced it, even though it makes sense, because it means she who gains enlightenment through knowledge, which totally makes sense if you really know how I am. But I never really felt like, yeah, but I feel like this was like that's my soul's name, because they just said it so simply, like that's just who I am, who I've always been, who I'll always be, and that's it. Ashira. Yep.
Suits you.
But I get
power.
What you were saying about, that whole not really realizing that you had attachment to a certain, because like over the last, I don't know how many years, people call me all kind, and I'm like, whatever. Like, I will respond. Like, if I hear noise and I realize it's directed at me, I'll respond. I don't really care what you call me. It doesn't make a difference. And but it reminded me that when I was in high school, because my birth record name is Nicole, but my family would call me Nikki. And at some point in high school, it was really bothersome to me. And, and I finally was like, if you wanted to call me Nikki, you should have named me Nikki. My name is Nicole. You gave me that name. Like, just simply call me Nicole. Like, quit calling me Nikki. Of course, now I think that was ridiculous, but yeah, it's funny how we can like have these weird, things that we bump up against with a name, during various parts of the journey.
Well, also that you said that it was during your teenage, right? It's you're trying to, it's more of an ego presence when you're a teenager, so you want to define that. Like, why do we color our hair purple one day? We're right. Like, oh, we're different, Do I stand out,
I like too how your experience with other people calling you divine, and not only asking you, like, and you flipping that to say honor yourself too. So happening on two levels, whether it's whatever part of the ego and the rising self and the self that you're growing through, it seems. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and I do love that. I mean, being divine. I shared that video with you. It was on Ancient Aliens, but I kept that little video because I really love it. It talks about just like how like things in our blood, like there's some kind of whatever, actually like, minerals in our blood or whatever that actually you can't find certain places, but that were part of the stars. And I always just liked that, because I was like, that is really, we really are. Like, we all need to know that we are like gods in ourselves. I don't mean that egocentrically. I mean that just as like we are creators. Like, because we are manifestors. We manifest all the time, whether it's good or bad, or we don't know we're doing it. So we have to stay really conscious about that focus. Where do we put our focus and what are we creating, all the time?
And a name change could help direct that. I think a name change could be, that's what I think I was trying to use it for, is I was like, I can't get out of this little muck, there's this attachment to this thing and I can't really name it other than pain or disappointment. And I don't know how to shed new skin and let something new in. So maybe I can manifest something new if I change that name. Maybe I could harness this power, creative power, in a different way.
Definitely. And I get that on both ends with the name Aman Devi. Is there was a part of me that wanted to, you sign up for your name with Kundalini Yoga, and I've had the name since 2015, and I was like, I hadn't come out of the closet with the name yet or embraced it. And part of me was like, wow, is that really the meaning of the name? Is one who has angelic presence or having an peaceful angelic presence. And I'm like, oh, that's not quite me. But there was something about living up to it. It's like I can strive to or take on or set the intention to be that presence. And there was also the opportunity that you talked about, Amanda, is kind of shedding old skin from the past. And I think it's so interesting that I finally in 2020 was like, okay, I'm going to use this name. I'm going to embrace it. And this is the same time in the Kundalini yoga community that rug got pulled out from under many people who really bow down in that culture. And I don't want to speak too much to that, to taint that, but it is just very interesting that in part of my act of defying my past or that shadow side, that another energy in the community that is attached to the name said, oh, here's this side of things, which is very interesting. And I hope that came out right.
Brilliant. And it really ties back into that dark and that light balance. And I love what you just said there, because what a painful experience to have people that you trust and you value and you think you're learning from turn out to be not who you thought they were, right? And to do things that are harmful to your gender, and your person, or not even gender, I think of it as both genders. And I wanted to just add something, if I could, to that, because when I took on my ex-husband's name, I thought I was leaving behind pain and suffering, and I was going to forge this new path, right? The whole thing was kind of a false present to myself, present gift to myself, because I actually was more of the same. I was attracting more of the same with him. And I didn't even realize it. And I kind of knew it at that time, but I was still in the fog, caught in it. And I was just like, oh, I'm just going to do this, intuitively, because I wasn't listening to myself deeply. What I realized was that shadow followed me with this new name, because it wasn't about the name. It was about the shadow in me. And still in me, the shadow side, that because of, thankfully, you asking me to do this, I've had to acknowledge again and be like, oh, this is a painful past. This is a painful reckoning that I'm calling forth right now because of the pain in that relationship. And now I'm carrying around this weight of this name, and I almost just want to take a shower and I want to be like, no, I'm going to wash this name off. I'm changing it. Like, I'm paying the $500. I'm changing it tomorrow. And then I'm like, or I could sit with this and be like, this shadow is going to follow me to my next name if I don't reconcile it in the present with love, new love, new energy, new healing within myself. So as you were speaking that all came front and center to me. I'm like, this is why this has been so painful for me, because it's the shadow. being called for. And it comes even when you change your name. You think you're finding the light, but you just find it more shadowed. Sometimes.
Both of you, two different things kind of came up as I was listening to both of you. Is that like one, Crystal, when you were talking about feeling when you got that name and felt like, oh, that's not me. But 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 how I know you, I really do feel like, yes, that is you. And so I think there was a part of in the claiming of the name that is a name that is like not a name that we're taking because we're running from another name, but as you know, a name that has been given to us, you know, by spirit, whether it's by spirit directly or through someone else. Claiming that name is a way for us to reclaim that aspect of ourselves and to step into the, oh, that's giving me goosebumps, and step into the power that comes along, which of course brings responsibility, stepping into the power of that name and being able to show up, you know, with that power in a responsible way. You know, I think that's, you know, that's one of the big things about the name. And but like also as you were talking about the ex-husband's name and stuff like that, one of the funny moments, my ex-husband didn't like, well, he'll never see this, but and if he does, I don't really care. So, you know, he didn't have the same sense of humor I do. But one of the few moments that he was really funny was when he called me and asked me if I wanted to change my last name. When we were getting divorced, he said, you can change your last name back to your maiden name, you know, for free in the midst of the divorce. But our kids were really young and whatever. And, you know, my married name is Cox. My maiden name was Bark. Like, I mean, really, you know, so I was like, I said, no, I'll leave it the way it is because of the kids. And it's not like my name was any better. And he was like, sorry, I couldn't have given you a better name. And we just started laughing because I was like, yeah, me too. So I'm just like, you know, but I have no attachment to it either way. And I didn't at that time. Like, I only kept it because it made it easier with my kids in school, you know. But as you were talking about, you know, your ex-husband, and you know, I think that's the case anytime we try to run from something, you know. It's gonna show up in another way.
Exactly. Yeah. And I was so glad that you called that out, because it was like, that's exactly what I was doing. I was running hard and fast and ran right into the damn wall. God, that was funny. It wasn't at the time. And you know, I just have to say something cool. My first boyfriend ever, in 4th grade, we held hands at skating ring. His last name was Cox.
Wait, are you in Texas? Maybe it was.
No.
Wouldn't that be funny? Oh my gosh.
That would be so weird.
Oh my gosh. That would really prove how small of a world it was, wouldn't it?
Oh, yes.
Did you have something, Divine Scarlet?
Oh, no, I was just, as you guys were talking, one of the things that came to me was, you know, like a lot of this learning, you know, self-care, learning who we are, digging deeper into our soul lessons are really about, you know, and our ego attachment, first of all, that's always getting in the way, is learning that we are not our story. So like, I think the name thing actually helps with that kind of level of playing field of now I'm going to make myself a news story, not to get attached to the news story too, but that you're getting out, you're stepping out of your story of who you thought you were and your labels that you were given when you were a kid. And one of the actual things that you're talking about, you know, being in pain and suffering is like, I actually think that that's really beautiful. And that's one of the things that made me become, you know, to do what I do now, because I would just look around, you know, you see all these differences of people, but one thing that's really beautiful to me that I see similar is how we all are in pain and how we all heal from the pain is different, but the pain itself is the same that we feel, and I think that that kind of unites people to me and also made me feel like I could go step out and help too. Because I came from a place where when I actually think my depression was great now looking back, because it was the thing that made me actually want to help people. And I was like 21 or 22. Of course, I thought it was the worst thing ever when you're 21, 22. But now looking back, I think it was funny. I mean, I just can't believe, like this is the end of the world for me. And it wasn't the end of the world. And no, but it was really good when I look back into it. And I think like, wow, that's the first thing that pushed you onto this path. I wouldn't have been myself if that didn't happen to me. And so to me, I actually think it's really beautiful. And also it had to do with a guy and not being able to be with him. And as Crystal knows, or that one of my biggest things is having women have, self-esteem, learning about their boundaries and, taking care of themselves as, one of the main focuses in their life, because so many times people look at the other for their own happiness versus themselves.
Yeah, that's good. And I really like how you sum that up, is like the story with the name. And that reminds me of the time I was given a name when I was at the Buddhist Meditation Center. And I forgot the name for the longest time. I actually, because we were talking, I pulled the name back out so I could remember what it was. But I will never forget the moment he gave me the name and tied the string on my wrist, because I just lit up, because the name meant unshakable one. And I got really excited about that, because I was like, oh, I wish I could be that. Because he was like tickled. He's like, oh, you like that name. But I never took it on, because I was like, I feel like a mess. Like, I don't feel that. And so it's interesting that not only the story playing into whether you accept, but also reject that opportunity. Oh, thank you.
It's not too late. And I just got chills when you said that. Ooh, unshakable one. Maybe you're coming into that new skin.
I agree.
Yeah. That would be a nice place to
Scarlett,
be.
when you were talking earlier about that we literally are stardust. We have stardust, running through our bloods. It's in our DNA. It reminded me of um Greg, what's his name? I can't remember his name right now. Braden. Yes, I can remember his name right. Greg. How he's done all that science behind, the spirit and whatever. And our DNA literally says God eternal within the body. Like he's done like the numbers and the letters and how it all translates. And we really are that, God eternal within the body. And, I think, as we embrace names like, the unshakable one, Crystal, like, again, as you embrace that, like that helps you to reclaim being the unshakable one, because you are God eternal within the body,
Resilient is really a huge thing too. To learn that resilience is one of the major factors of learning how to get up, right? Like get up again and get up again.
Mm-hmm. And that really, I like that, get up again, and that idea of reclaiming resilience and reclaiming of like, I'm going to come back to my innate self, however that presents itself today and in this moment, to persevere. Beautiful.
I like what you said about rejecting and accepting a name too, because I mean, maybe not so much rejecting it, but just not being ready for it. Maybe just not quite having it land because it just didn't settle right with where you were, but one day it will. Maybe it was more of a foreshadowing than something to grab onto right in the moment.
Yeah.
I had a friend, my friend Shama, I call her Shama Lama, and she used to call me when we were going through this really intensive body electronics mastery level, just craziness of transforming old belief patterns and in our body. And after one of the sessions, she just looked at me and she said, "I'm going to call you Amanda Nunda." from here on out. And I think that Nanda means joy in Sanskrit. And yeah, so I never latched onto that. I never owned that. But maybe that's something to reconsider now. Maybe I could be inspired by this whole talk and rethink through that or refeel through that.
It does feel like a name, whichever way you take it on, is a transformative practice. And I like the idea that it's like between you and another human being with your connection, that you have that, almost like the way a nickname could be at a period of time in your life. You know, there's some people that used to call me Chris. It's like it fit with that moment, and you have that bond through that connection. And it's like, I don't know, the word transformative is just like hitting right now. I don't know if that is speaking to you at all, if you have anything on that.
I think that's a good point too, Crystal, is that you know, it is interesting how, like, especially with certain nicknames, and I don't mean like honey, you know, dear, you know, we live up in Maryland, so Juan, or, you know, in the South they like to like throw out sugar and call people sugar britches, and like but more where it's like a shortened part of your name, or like it has part of your name in it, but it's not all of the rest of it. And how there are times where there are certain people where it feels not just okay, but it feels very comfortable for them to call you that nickname or that short name or that variation of the name. But then you hear somebody else use it and you're like, no, you don't know me like that. Like, you don't like we ain't there. We ain't there. We're not like that. You know, like, back off. Like, my name to you is this, because, and I wonder if I hadn't thought about this until just now, but like, I wonder if that is some kind of like boundary in a way, you know, as, you know, like, it's okay for you to call me this because this is the level we know each other, and it's an energetic boundary, you know, but it's okay for other people to call me this because we have a more intimate relationship. You know, like when Cole came about, because that's not the nickname my family, you know, called me. Like, obviously they went with Nikki and Nick and whatever. And but Cole came about because I was teaching preschoolers yoga. And it was really difficult, especially for this one little boy, to say Miss Nicole. Like, he just, like, it was too much to wrap his little mouth around, you know? And so he just started calling me Miss Cole, Miss Cole, Miss Cole. And I didn't, whatever, I don't care. I knew the kid didn't, like, he wasn't trying to be disrespectful. He was 3-4 years old. Like, he was just doing the best he could to try to call me something with respect. And so the director said to me, pulled me aside one day and said, "Are you okay with them calling you Miss Cole? Like, is that?" And I, you know, thought it was odd that she had asked me that, because these are kids. They don't mean disrespect. And I was like, yeah, of course it is. And then, like, the more I thought about it, I was like, wait, Cole's kind of a cool, Cole's kind of, it's kind of a really cool nickname for Nicole, because most people wouldn't do that. And for some people that do call me Cole, it actually does feel really cool and really natural. And then other people might call me that, and I'm kind of like, ooh, that just feels weird.
Yeah, like, you're not allowed. No, not you.
Yeah, people would say you're not allowed, and other people it's just kind of like, that just, I don't know, just feels weird.
What about like the rejection and acceptance piece of spirituality and transforming into a new, like a new version of yourself, growing new skin, and how it is okay on the external, isn't okay on the internal? Did that come out right? Where like where you're embraced by some, accepted by some, where you feel comfortable with some and you don't feel comfortable with others? How does that kind of land or feel?
I do think it's interesting that you, of all people, Crystal, picked the growing new skin.
I know. I
Two
know.
snakes that come to visit. Oh, funny.
And we saw a snake yesterday on a hike, and I was like, no way. Next to a feather. I was like, no way. No way.
That's awesome. New skin feather.
Yeah, I do think that's interesting. I think that's an excellent question. You know,
Yeah, I was actually thinking when you said the word transformative at first, I actually wrote down identity. And I think that's something we've kind of been talking around but haven't really named, is that a name is a form of identity. It's a form of giving ourselves identity with different circles, who we want to be called from. We want to be called this name with this circle, or this name with this circle, or maybe we're known the same name for all of our circles, who knows, you know. But it's like how people see us and how we want to be perceived, and then our interpretation of what we think that they're perceiving, which probably has little to do with what they're actually perceiving. Like the little kid that called you cold didn't mean any offense, right? And probably many people that call you that wouldn't, you know, there wouldn't be an offense. It would just be like what they knew or whatever. And so I think about like how we construct identity. And I used to talk about this in my university classes. This whole concept of all of this is constructed, right? Identity is constructed, how perception is constructed based off of the ideology that we're born into, that we're raised into, that we develop and grow and morph into as we get new life experience, and as we learn new things, we're getting new knowledge, we gather up new levels of enlightenment, you know, and we're progressing on our path. And so our identity shifts and changes. And I think it's beautiful to change your name. And maybe we should have more freedom with changing our name. Maybe we could change it more often, because if you think about like where this root of name comes from, it's very patriarchal. It's very much like you take on your father's name, you take on your husband's name. What? Why not just have our own name that we get to define, we get legal control over, we have our authority over? These are all constructs, and it comes from a very old system, and people place value on it, and but it did serve us. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It used to serve very well, because it's like you would come from a certain family, and so you would go, for some people that meant you could go into the town, you could get a job because you had this family name, right? And so names used to serve a purpose, like holding on to that last name, or going to this family, or how you distribute wealth and property, which women were left out of for a long time, but then, you know, that changed too. But anyway, this whole concept of name is very interesting, because we attach it to identity, but it's a construct. It's a construct. It came from somewhere, you know, and we were given it. And so we think that we're born into it, and we think that it is us and we are it, but we're not. And it's not. We're more than that. We're way more than that.
One thing that came to mind when you were talking about that is that I remember when I was in meditation class, I was in it for a few years, and we had to like, and also being in astrology is kind of together. When you learn your ego first, like when they used to ask us this question and we used to have to go back and forth with it, was tell me who you are. And at first we would first label ourselves like, I am Melissa, I like this, I like that. And then after doing it so many times, it turns into just what you're feeling at the moment, which means that we're everything encompassing. And so when you start unattaching those same labels, you know, you find more depth. But at the same time, I've also come across, like, let's say some people, I don't know if you know these kind of people too, is I feel like you do need to learn your ego and your identification first, because you can't let go of it unless you know it, right? So some of these people, they can't see themselves very clearly, and they have more issues, I feel, with letting go of that, because they can't themselves yet. So I think it is really good to learn your ego identification kind of at first too.
Well, we all feel more secure when we have a sense of belonging, right? And it's nice to have a tribe. And for a long time, our survival is based on that. And so our amygdala in our brain is actually hardwired for that. We feel more comfortable when we're accepted. And so it's a neurological compulsion to be accepted. And so having a name, sharing a name with someone gives you automatic entry into that group. And so you say, you know, I remember going home after being in college and coming back to this idea of home where my family was. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know, I feel different, but everything seems the same. And then I would be like, but then I felt this sense of comfort because I shared their name, because I didn't have to worry of it. And this was a stark contrast for me because my mother never had my name for very long. She got divorced with my father. And then I always had the stepdad name, right? And that she would have, but I didn't belong to anybody's name. My sisters had a different name. My mom had a different name. I had this other name, you know, it was kind of a wacky name morphification, which is probably why I didn't care that much about names. But long story short is that I did have an aunt and uncle that shared my name. And so whenever they'd give me a card or I'd see their name on a card, or I would go to their place and we called ourselves the Bowlings, which is my maiden name, I'd feel like, oh, this sense of belonging and acceptance at this neurological place that I didn't have to try. I didn't have to dig for. I didn't have to be smart or pretty or accepted or fun or anything. Like felt like I had to put up this front, you know, with friends. There, I got the name. So I got in. So I know exactly what you mean. It's like there's a sense and a level of comfort that comes with that. And it's very soothing, right? Until we can go off and find our own identity, right? To identify with that.
Sorry to cut you off there, but
no, please, yeah.
I like Divine Scott, how you talked about the ego, but also Amanda, how you're talking about the sense of belonging. And I agree with you that you need to understand the ego part in your identity. And I feel like it serves a purpose of either protecting from a story where you were hurt or protecting a vulnerability you don't want to expose. So really getting in there and debunking, like, what purpose does this serve me to hold to the story, to hold to this identity, or morph to feel connected, even if it is on an external level. I think, you know, we could probably all look at our lives on some level and look how you kind of blend or do your best to fit the need in a moment.
Right, yes. Yeah. Beautiful.
But that ego part, but I think it goes back to what you're saying, both Cole and I wanted to say your name again, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna mess that up. But how you have to know all parts of yourself, the light and the dark, the shining and the shadow, how necessary it is to really get your hands dirty and know it.
Wow.
Yeah, because then you start developing your own sense of identity that's more based off of your pure connection to divine, your pure connection to source. And you're not letting other people tell you who you are, or you're not doing it to get something like comfort or belonging. It's just that connection to source, that connection to divine. And then you feel that sense of identity, and that comes from what you were just talking about, recognizing the shadow, right? And moving through it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think too, Amanda, how you were talking about, you know, having that freedom to change our name whenever, you know, it's time to kind of to embrace that next level of experience, or, you know, however you want to put it. But I think that, you know, we do need, especially like as I was thinking about like how you had these names that you were like, these aren't me. I think all of the names that we have from well, incarnation, but we'll just stick with this lifetime. From the first of this lifetime to, you know, to when we disembody or unembody, when we cross the threshold again, all of those names are still parts of ourself, in various ways, and making peace with that. There are bits of ourself that don't necessarily, okay, so it's interesting. Although Crystal, I think after I had been realized the name Ashira, after that meditation we talked about it, I think you were the one who had looked it up, and you found a different meaning than the one that I found, because the meaning that I kept finding was like she who sings, which is, if you like, I'm actually tone deaf and I don't even have a body very attuned in. So I was like, this cannot, like, but I think Crystal actually found a different meaning that actually made much more sense. But so I think, that, there are some names that the sound that makes doesn't seem quite as harmonious as other names do, but they are all still part of who we are, and they all do serve a purpose. All of these names do, and it's just like, that hero's journey. And if you look at it through the journey through the tarot and how it marks that, different cards or different names, the energy of that is going to show up more prevalently. You teach English, Amanda. If that's not right, fix it. Put a little note.
Oh no,
Prevalently at different times during our journey, and so then saying, yeah, maybe not my favorite name, but served its purpose. Moving on now.
Moving on. Serving and recognizing that it served a purpose as well.
Right.
Definitely.
Yes.
There's only other one thought I had that I wanted to bring up, and I'm asking this question without a lot of knowledge behind it, but simply a curiosity of this concept of coming out anew. And with, we've all had different backgrounds and childhood experiences, and then some, that kind of could put us in this box. And then as you grow anew with spiritual practices, that's a new box. We don't have to live in a box. We're clearly exploring our own identity. But I think it's very interesting that during virtue, and again, I'm not coming with a lot of knowledge behind this, so that you can correct me on that. She brought, a certain level of experience. She brought knowledge. She brought decks to the world, and then it flipped. And I think her flip is very interesting, because do people then see a flip on another side? No different than like drinking a lot, all of a sudden you're not going to drink. Where do you see that with identity, ego, growing, and transformation? And again, I don't have a lot of knowledge behind it. It's just like an idea that
I threw decks actually when that happened. I was like, what? She went Christian? What the hell is this all about? But yeah, because to me that's like a real crazy flip. Like if you're trying to get off drinking, that's probably positive for you, right? Whereas this was just like a complete like, like, oh, I was wrong this whole time. What was I doing? And then it was like, now she stands for something else. So to me, that's not a really great idea of a flip like that. But so we're growing into our own, we're all becoming, that's like the word I'd like to use. And we're becoming into this thing we have, or an idea. Maybe we don't even have an idea. Maybe it's just natural. Sometimes we can see a little light. We'll use the word light in this sense. You see a light, that's the end of some tunnel that's dark, but it's, you're kind of just going, but you're not really sure of where it's leading quite yet, So I feel like, we're all evolving, but not necessarily like, I think with her, it's more of a real flip. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but like in a different direction completely.
It it seemed like more of a backflip than a front flip.
That's what I will do.
But that's just my, you know, your question, Crystal, actually made me think, and this is, you know, I'm sure the answer, like a short, quick answer would probably be like, yes, absolutely. But the that the as our journey progresses, you know, and we do are either given, you know, names to remind us, or, you know, we claim these names or whatever, that there's a direct relationship or correlation between the name and the vibration, and the vibrational state that we're at when, hold on, let me see if I can. So like how you said the Buddhist name you gave at the time didn't really feel right, you know, like you weren't like there yet. But then as you moved into a vibrational state that was in alignment with that name, that's when, like, we take on these names to reflect that that vibrational shift that is going on internally. So what are you guys' thoughts on that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. I think we call to us whatever is our outer world is a reflection of our inner world. So
Right.
a name is that an inner thing or an outer thing?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Right?
You know what, this world,
Yeah.
it just, I feel like this world's so amazing. Like literally you could have like living hell on this planet if you call that in, and you can have a little slice of paradise if you call it in. It all depends on where you are, you know. I consider this place heaven and hell in one place, you know, and it depends what you manifest into your life.
I feel so bad because during the lockdown in Maryland and during COVID, it was stressful, and I felt the energy of all the fear, and I was spending a lot of time laying on my floor, releasing and just being like, breathe, and with my honey, you know, doing some of the grocery shopping because I'd come back laying on the floor and be like, I don't know what just happened at the store, and he's like, oh, but it was beautiful in that he got time off work and we just started doing yoga every day. It's like we didn't know what else to do. So we created this little like hub of like everyday practice, going inward and just doing yoga. And I feel almost guilty because I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it, and I liked going in, and I liked an excuse not to do anything else but just be in the house and go within. Although now I'm about over it. I'm ready to go, you know, see my family and go visit people, but I'm like, okay, time to go within again.
Break from the madness of what American society had, you know, devolved into.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, for us to get to a different perspective, you know.
Definitely. And embracing where we're at is a beautiful place, no matter how it's showing up in our homes, externally or internally, through a name, through an emotion, or whatever it is, and through connection. So I am so grateful for all the connections, all the stories, and for sharing this journey with all of you. And I appreciate your sharing and your chatting, and everyone for your part in the big puzzle.